So, I'm hoping I have good enough lighting to be filming here. It's late at night, but I thought I would get in a quick video on this Monday night before I dig into my readings for classes this week. I finished reading a biography of Joe Clark the other week. This is from 1978. Joe Clark was a former Canadian Prime Minister. He was Prime Minister for a very short period of time, actually. Just a few months in 1979 between two Pierre Trudeau governments. He was unable to pass his budget, which, of course, in the Canadian system, spurred another election. But Joe Clark was leader of the official opposition, the Conservative Party, for many years, and this book by David L. Humphreys was published, I think, as kind of promotional material, unofficial promotional material for Joe Clark to allow the Canadian public to get to know him, even though it's supposedly an independent publication. The person who wrote it, you get the sense that they knew Joe Clark very well, and they are expressing a favorable opinion of him. It begins with a bit about his childhood out on the prairies, his connections to his hometown, how he's this country boy, this Western Canadian who expresses not only Canadian ideals, but Western Canadian ideals. And then a bit about his education, how he got into politics, and it was overall just kind of an informative but interesting historical read. This was, of course, published before he was Prime Minister, so you don't get that aspect to it, but it is probably one of my favorite reads of this year so far. Not that I've read much. I think this was my third or fourth read this year. But I ended up picking this up after being home for Christmas. My parents have cable. I was staying on their living room floor on a mattress, and we would pull it out of my parents' bedroom from up against the wall in the evenings, drag it out, toss it on the floor right in front of the TV, and I would stay up late. I stayed up late 4 or 5 nights consecutively, tuned into the CPAC channel. And about 10 p.m. every night, they would start playing one of their historic debates. I believe the first evening was 1979. That debate went for 2 hours. Then the next evening, I got a debate from 1980, 1981, 1982. Some very interesting debates to do with, Joe Clark's budget, but also constitutional debates. Anyone who knows much about Canadian history and politics will know that in 1982 we patriated our constitution from the United Kingdom. Up until that point, to amend our constitution, it required an act of the British Parliament, which was pretty ridiculous for an independent country in the 1980s. And so in 1982, we finally brought our constitution home to Canada, and it no longer requires an act of British Parliament to amend it. But there were extensive constitutional talks in the late 1970s, early 1980s, even after we patriated the Constitution. There were continuing constitutional talks way up into the 1990s as politicians attempted to amend the Constitution once again to be more inclusive of things that the provinces desired and things that the federal government desired. I also ended up watching a debate right after 9/11, I believe, in the House. But that's what led me to pick up this biography of Joe Clark. A few nights in a row, I saw Joe Clark in the House of Commons, giving speeches, some of them very inspiring. He was a very good speaker. I can't help but think that if it wasn't for Pierre Trudeau, we would perhaps be talking about Joe Clark as one of the most beloved prime ministers, because he really did have quite a bit of charisma, very inspiring speaker, very positive and constructive ideas. But of course, Pierre Trudeau and the Liberals outshined him at this period in history.